Hello, welcome to the programme.
When I got the 7:30 report, I was Australia's first black television presenter, but the press went berserk. They went berserk. Been in Australia for 3 years now. My beginnings in this country were pretty traumatic. I hated it, to be quite blunt. I had never had any intentions of living in Australia. In fact, I'd been here as a tourist and I said, no way will I ever live in this country. It's the most racist country I've ever visited. I still stand by that.
Meanwhile, China isn't just battling flooding. It's also waging a war on crime.
Welcome back to Video Hits. Fuzzy here, coming to you backstage from the Future Music.
In a world where progress is constant, women of colour are claiming spaces that were once inaccessible. Today, they are leaders, innovators, advocates and change makers. From the halls of power in politics to the front lines of media, their voices are more amplified than ever. But with this visibility comes a price often paid in hatred, fear, and relentless opposition.
Give us what you stole from us! Our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people! You destroyed our land! Give us a treaty! This is not your land! This is not your land! You are not my kids! You are not our kids!
Lidia Thorpe is one of those powerful voices. A trailblazer, she has dedicated her life to advocating for the rights of First Nations people and marginalised communities. As the first Aboriginal woman to represent Victoria in the Senate, she broke barriers that no one thought possible. Her political career has been marked by fierce passion, unwavering courage, and a commitment to justice.
You destroyed our land! Give us a treaty! We want a treaty in this country!
But it's her infamous protest against King Charles III and Camilla during their royal tour in Australia last year that sparked a firestorm. In an act of defiance, she called out the colonial legacy that continues to harm her people. The response? A media frenzy that sought to discredit her, demonise her as unpatriotic, radical and dangerous.
Just disgraceful stuff from Lidia Thorpe.
It's appalling behaviour, Carl. We're embarrassed across the globe as a result of this.
There she is, front and centre, getting ready to carry on like the pork chop that she can be.
Federal Parliament has censured independent Senator Lidia Thorpe over her protest during King Charles's visit to Parliament House last month.
Independent Senator Lidia Thorpe has been censured over her protest against King Charles's visit to Canberra. She made global headlines last month after interrupting a ceremony and yelling at His Majesty. Today she entered the chamber yelling, "Shame on you," to the senators.
Senator Thorpe, I have called you to order.
Senator Thorpe maintains she will not be silent.
Across Australia, women of colour who speak out against injustice are often met with resistance and told to stay in their lane. Ahead of International Women's Day, I sat down with Independent Senator Lidia Thorpe, who told me she's been hearing these words her entire life.
I think, that's why I'm in the job that I'm in, because I never listened to that. My lane is the lane that I make. It's self-determined by me. And when we are continually denied justice and told to stick in our own lane, that's racist. That's trying to shut us down. It's keeping us in our place. Well, we gotta not accept that as the norm. And if somebody's saying that to you, then they need to be told to stay in their own lane and look at their own privilege, whatever that might be. But it would certainly be more privilege than any black or brown woman in this country, or anywhere else for that matter. So being told to stay in my lane, I think we create our own and we go all the way with it.
Yeah. Nyadol Nyuon's journey is one of resilience. From a refugee camp in Kenya to the Australian legal system, the respected lawyer has fought battles far beyond the courtroom. But when she spoke out against workplace injustice, she faced yet another fight, one that tested even her unshakable strength. In 2021, Victoria University in Melbourne announced that Nyadol had been appointed as its new director of the Sir Zalman Cohen Centre, and she began work the following year. However, in December last year, she made a bold decision to expose the racism that she allegedly endured at the institution. She says that she was labelled a diversity hire, repeatedly undermined, and that she faced systemic barriers at every turn. She says when she pushed back, she was dismissed as emotional, a familiar term often weaponised against women of colour in leadership roles.
I start a new job and someone says to me, I was quite surprised that they went for somebody like you. And of course, this is a white man, and he goes, you are a young woman on the rise, but you don't have this, you don't have this, you don't have this. This is supposed to be somebody that I'm technically their boss, telling me in a meeting that I'm supposed to be talking to him about some particular thing that he didn't think I should be doing this job, right?
Wow.
Or it was, being appointed to a board, and the first question somebody asked me was, "How did you get this job?"
Wow.
And the funny part is, none of these people said it from a place of hateful racism, right? Like it wasn't, and this is what I always tell people, racism often doesn't turn up in a Ku Klux Klan burning a flag.
No.
It's the assumptions you give people, it's the grace you give people, and so I what you just say, I don't enjoy that in place. People don't look at my resume. I mean, if people, even on the drum, right? People some of the comments I get, people don't think, oh, she's got, she's
done all
she's
these
worked at a
amazing
commercial
things.
firm. She's
Yeah.
like, she's been in advocacy of some form, for 10 years. No, they see diversity.
Yeah.
They see, how did you get here?
Yeah.
Despite your resume, right?
Yeah.
In which, if somebody else had a similar resume, they'll never get asked that same question.
Absolutely.
If they didn't have the black passport.
Yeah.
which is almost like what people decide where they're going to give you access or not when you have a black passport.
Or what sort of authority we can ascribe to you.
Oh my God, absolutely, yes.
That's so interesting. But of course, it says more about them, and as we...
The psychological and physical toll on Nyadol was so severe that at one point she was hospitalised. In a statement to the back cover, Victoria University said it takes complaints seriously and strongly stands against any form of racism. Sadly, Nyadol's not alone. Research from Mind Tribes shows nearly 1 in 3 women of colour have experienced racism at work. More than half have faced bullying or harassment, but mostly stay silent, and 60% do not report it, fearing backlash or believing nothing will change. Another woman who has fought for change, like Nyadol, is Antoinette Lattouf, a journalist who spoke up and took on one of Australia's biggest media institutions. A respected journalist and media advocate, Antoinette built her career on telling important stories, but when she challenged injustice, she became the story.
Antoinette Lattouf was taken off-air by ABC management 3 days into a 5-day presenting shift on ABC Radio Sydney last December after she shared a social media post about the war in Gaza.
In December of 2023, while filling in as a host at ABC Sydney, Antoinette was suddenly removed from her role just days into her scheduled appearance.
And so I'm brought into a room with 3 managers and who I've otherwise had a good relationship with, and I am told that I am to essentially just leave the building, go and get my bag. I'm no longer required, that I'm being dismissed. And I was shocked, and I was like, why? We just had that meeting. I'm like, we've planned tomorrow's show. Like, how is that? Why? And they were like, well, you shared this Human Rights Watch post, and it puts your credibility or your impartiality in question. I was like, what? But the ABC news outlet published that story, and I didn't add any commentary. I presented it as a factual Human Rights Watch reporting starvation a tool of war. And Human Rights Watch, as you would know, is one of the most reputable human rights organisations in the world. So I was gobsmacked, I was floored, but I was not surprised that this was happening based on the prior knowledge I had about how difficult it was to operate as a journalist in Australia, to report without fear or favour, let alone wanting to report without fear or favour or post on social media without fear or favour if you have an Arab or Muslim background.
Antoinette's dismissal sparked international outrage. Supporters saw it as an attempt to censor a journalist who dared to share facts about the war in Gaza. The ABC denied wrongdoing, but Antoinette did not back down. She took them to court. Throughout the case, lawyers for Antoinette argued that her employment was terminated based on her political opinions and/or race, and that this breached the ABC's enterprise agreement. A key issue is whether the ABC directed Antoinette not to post anything on social media. The public broadcaster defended the case, saying that she was let go after breaching this direction as well as its editorial policies of impartiality. Lattouf's case also highlighted concerns of racial bias. As a Lebanese-Australian journalist, she pointed to instances where her race and political views appeared to influence how she was treated by the ABC. She argued that compared to her colleagues, she was unfairly scrutinised, with her views on race and injustice playing a role in her dismissal.
It has always been clear to me that ABC senior management and its board capitulated to a factually inaccurate and baseless email campaign targeting me. The campaign was driven by lobbyist lawyers who were defending a foreign government that commits war crimes after war crimes and continues to do so. It is now glaringly clear to me and to millions of Australians that our ABC is in serious trouble. Despite a charter built on impartiality and independence, ABC leaders have been partial to outside influence, betraying both.
Div Pillay is a leading diversity and inclusion practitioner, researcher and advocate with over 24 years of experience in gender, race and cultural inclusion. She is also the co-founder and CEO of Mind Tribes. Through her research, Div has found that women of colour are often punished for speaking out and judged more harshly than their white counterparts. Her work continues to highlight the challenges women of colour face in their pursuit of justice and equality.
Those narratives that are out there in the media and these women are painted also with a very narrow single story narrative. So they paint it as disruptive, as overly, emotional or aggressive, and it tends to amplify all the negative and gendered perceptions of what a woman is when she says, no, this is not okay. So I do feel like it creates a very dangerous single story narrative. And so even if we're finding, and we tested this as well, so I want to give it some evidence also, because when we run listening circles in workplaces, we can hear women pick up these cases and talk about them even without any prompting from us. So they're seeing this happen, they are aware, and it causes them to think, well, I don't want the same sort of personal brand in my workplace. That the moment I say something, and it's sometimes not even reporting a negative behavior, sometimes it's actually just having a professional conversation where there's disagreement. So we're finding that it's even in professional meetings when a woman of color has to, say something different compared to the 9 other people in the room, and they say it quite passionately, or they actually disagree openly with someone in more positional power, that's seen as quite disruptive, like extremely disproportionately disruptive, when actually if a white male had to raise the same thing, we see, because I'm a behavioral psych, and what I find is that those behaviors from a white male or white female might be received very differently. Like, this is someone who actually is a different thinker, a challenger mindset, innovative, different idea. So it gets painted with a very positive bias but when a woman of color does it in the backdrop of the Antoinette Lattoufs of the world, then it gets seen as, similarity, like an affinity bias. This must be a similar kind of angry black woman or brown woman. And I'm absolutely seeing that there's a harshness in the response. And that's quite sad, actually, because just as we're finding our voices, just as we're finding seats at tables, at boardrooms and executive teams, we now have this double whammy of not just being, the female in the room, but being the only woman of color in the room, and that voice gets moderated or punished.
Research shows workplace discrimination cases are on the rise across Australia, and Melbourne lawyer Maker Mayek said his law firm has seen a growing number of these cases.
I think, the straight advice is seek help. Don't let this fester. Don't let it go on, because the more you accept a situation you're in, so that you continue to work, the more it will affect your physical and mental well-being. Don't accept it. There are yes, it's lawyers are out there very expensive, but you can always access lawyers that can assist. Whether these are lawyers that are embedded within the community, or these are from the legal centers, or maybe VLA, not so ideal, but there are so many protections that people do enjoy under the Fair Work Act and other state-based legislations. Don't give up your rights. You've got to seek help. Ask a lawyer, or at least ask someone that will know a lawyer, and you'll be surprised on how much people are out there that can give you some assistance.
Another woman who knows all too well about being told to stay in her lane is Greens MP Gabrielle de Vietri, but she refuses to back down. She said this International Women's Day, allyship is more important than ever.
Well, it's so important that when we look at women's rights, we do so from an intersectional lens, because we can't have women's justice without justice for our LGBTIQA plus community, without justice for people of colour, without justice for trans and gender diverse people. So as long as we are looking at justice through an intersectional lens, then the fights that we have are fights for equality and justice for everybody. But if we're looking at it purely through a singular lens, then we're likely to repeat the discriminatory and hierarchical and unjust systems that have led to women being oppressed all over again.
Senator Thorpe echoed similar sentiments and also called for unity.
That white women need to move over and allow black and brown women the opportunity to have their say. International Women's Day means nothing when the incarceration rates of Aboriginal women and Aboriginal children are going through the roof. Our children are being taken at a very fast rate in comparison to the stolen generation. We have 24,000 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children in out-of-home care today in this country. And we can celebrate International Women's Day, but what does it mean when the injustices continue to be perpetrated against our women and our girls and our children in this country? So I think those things need to change, and the white women in this country need to stand with us, by our side, and demand that change. That's where we'll be able to have the power as a collective of women to do the right thing, and that is look after each other and look after the children. If we can't do that, then what's there to celebrate?